One person who didn't seem to like your speech to Davos was President Trump. I'm sure that's not because you got a standing O, and he didn't.
His was bigger. His standing ovation was bigger. Let's be clear about that, and let's not.
Well, that's interesting, because that goes to what I want to ask you, which is your system for dealing with President Trump. Every leader in the world has to have one, and we watched your first meeting with President Trump. I think it was 8 days after your election, and the deftness was pretty impressive. I was struck, Mr. Trump was talking about making Canada the 51st state, and he said, I'm a real estate developer, and you look at that artificial line, it doesn't make sense. And you said, Mr. President, as you know from real estate, there are some places that are never for sale, like the White House or Buckingham Palace. So you kind of managed your way through there in a way that a lot of other leaders haven't managed to do. So what's your game plan for managing Mr. Trump?
Wow, okay. Look at the 21 minutes. I'll be able to swing that, stretch this out.
It's time for another adjacent answer.
Exactly. No, the game, but look, I think the first thing is one, respect, but not obsequiousness, right? He's president for a reason. He's had success in other areas. He's eminently, elected twice. You would say elected 3 times. He does, but very successful politician, and what I find is that he appreciates, particularly in private, being direct and discussing issues and being clear where your position is. So that is crucial. You don't want to. I'm going to say something very obvious, but it's important. You don't want to say anything in public that you can't back up. You might choose your words. One chooses language for the audience, right? I mean, that's true in any circumstance, so you're careful in terms of the language that you use with him, but in a way that's consistent with what you really think, and then it's quite different in private. It's much more. He is more interested in your viewpoint on various things in private, and that creates an ability to work through things. But it's not easy, to be clear. It's not easy.
All right, let me ask you about your relationship with another important leader, Xi Jinping. You visited Beijing recently, along with many other Western countries. And when you were there, you said, I think, that Canada's partnership with China sets us up well for the New World Order. Now, I get it. That's risk management. Everybody is, when you have one partner that seems to be erratic and reliable, it makes impeccable sense to deepen your connections with the other hegemon. But what about the risks of dealing with an authoritarian country like China? How do you manage that? Because both Australia and Canada have been subject to tariffs and attempted coercion over the years.
Well, it's interesting. The first time as Prime Minister that I met with President Xi, which was at the APEC summit in November, he chose to spend the first 10 plus minutes discussing how he wanted the personal interaction to be. And if I were to summarize, no surprises. If you really care about something, be clear. Don't lecture me. I mean, he didn't say it this way, but I interpret it. Don't lecture me in public. Bring issues to me directly. Then, I mean, there is some recognition, obviously, the responsibilities of democratic leaders to be transparent in public, but don't start in public and then try to backfill. So, so that's the first point. The second thing, I would say we take from Australia a number of lessons in terms of how to engage with China, which are consistent with what he chose, that interaction, which is to be very clear about where we're looking to cooperate and where we're not. So if I call it guardrails, but on the relationship. And that goes to the recalibration of our relationship with China, which had, for various reasons, valid reasons, had deteriorated, and it was time to reset that. But from a very low base, and a low base in terms of our actual level of integration with China. We're not heavily integrated with China. We're not running a big risk in terms of increasing our activity with China. And to be clear, the areas where we're cooperating, agri-food, in the broad aspects, it's very much it's in both our interest. Like, there's a very strong alignment, and so the risk of being hung up on that is lessened. And then from our perspective on clean energy, broadly speaking, we need some partnerships there to help us with the scale of the build-out we're going to do. It's not going to be uniquely China. It could be India. It could be European partners. It could be U.S. partners. It could be, actually, I had some meetings today with some Australian partners. You can probably guess some of them. And so that China comes into that in that regard. We will have, and now let me do a contrast if I could, which is obviously with Australia, we will talk to and about absolutely anything from intelligence, to other cooperation, defense cooperation in the deepest sense. Anything's on the table, and much we'll do. India would be somewhere in the middle, wider than China, but obviously nowhere near as deep as Australia. So there's certain aspects in aerospace where there's opportunities with India, which we wouldn't, with China. Certain aspects around, actually there's more than certain aspects, there's a variety of aspects around AI where we would cooperate with India, in part because, to go back to the way we're approaching the world, we need to build resilience in AI. That doesn't mean we're default wholly reliant on hyperscalers as strong as they are. And certainly not, we don't look for AI cooperation with China, but we wouldn't want to go to the other side.
All right, let me ask you about India, as you've just mentioned it.
Yep.
You've just come from India. In the recent past, Canada's had a fraught relationship with India. You're looking to change the terms of it. Tell us a bit about Mr. Modi. He's another one of these big figures that is dominating international politics at the moment. You've just spent a couple of days with him. What was your assessment of him?
Well, look, the guy he's unique, I would say. 25 years, I was telling Glenn Stevens this, 25 years, and he has not taken a day off, 25 years straight as either chief minister in Gujarat or prime minister, not one day off. Every weekend he is out, like you, Francois Philippe, every weekend he's out campaigning. He gets 250,000 people at his rallies. You get 25, but that's okay. That's good. That's good. In rural, it's pas mal. It's pas mal du tout. But so first off is just the level of the work that's there. Second thing, he gave me a hack that everyone follow this up, which is again just on a personal level, the impressions, which is he's a person who is very, and I've known this from before, but it's interesting just the interaction over time. He's very focused on delivery. I'll call it to the rural household, but to, we would say in Canada, Monsieur, Madame, tout le monde, the person on the street sort of thing. So a huge motivation for the financial reform transformations, the payment systems transformation, UPI and other things, was to get money directly, as you know, directly to individuals without leakage, shall we say, in the system in real time, and to bring people, hundreds of millions of people into the formal economy. And he's very focused on that aspect of delivery. So here he's, up at this global level operating, India rising, challenges, but much positive, but a leader who keeps bringing it back down to that level. So there's much to see there. He didn't say this, but I could see him saying this, and any Indian leader saying that, talking about the hegemons using their authority, the rules-based order, all that stuff, the sort of thesis that I've been outlining. their attitude would be, well, what took you so long to figure that out? I mean, we've been non-aligned since regaining independence in 1947. And so it's, in that regard, we found, colleagues were there, the discussions around the areas where we could cooperate in a collaborative way and why that was in both of our, not just economic issue, but strategic interests. Straightforward, absolutely not preaching to the converted, but just aligned in the thinking around it and creating a huge element. Last point, if I may, because you started on the nature of the relationship and the very real challenges that we've had. There is an issue with a number of countries that affect our countries said different, and there are different aspects of this: foreign interference, transnational repression, cross-border security issues. We are much more aggressive much more cognizant of these issues, much more aggressive on these issues. And the way we look at it is our approach is vigilance and engagement. And vigilance is having the right laws, having the law enforcement, monitoring for this, addressing it, calling it out, addressing issues when they come up, protecting Canadians in our case. But at the same time, having engagement with these countries so that we can have the security dialogue, so we can go directly to the individual, so we can call things out and start to address them, because vigilance alone isn't going to be enough. And so we're moving, we've made a lot of progress in the last 11 months with India, both economically, but also in the broader security relationship. More to be done, without question.